Welcome to Simply Enough. This is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you, and remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Mr. Zachary Linnert.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio.
I want to kick us off today, building off of what I shared last week or last episode about my search for the perfect tent. I had a wonderful time with my sister and her family camping in this spot that they love so much. And the tent was great. Like it was really fantastic. I had shared, I was hoping to find a tent that had certain criteria. It was definitely tall enough. There was lots of room and good airflow and all these things that I was hoping to find. And I was also just acutely reminded that it was a tent for camping, right? Like at the end of the day, it was a tent for camping.
Right. Right. And you spent, again, how much time did you invest in this quest for perfection?
It was like 3.5 months, maybe. Yes. And I don't know, a couple hours, maybe a day going back and forth. I know.
Oh, but it was a perfect tent.
Oh, it was excellent. And I will say, I don't think I told you this before, but at one point I had like 15 tabs open of all of the different tents that I was considering. And then I would go back and forth and I would like, do I have this one versus that one? And I like this color, but I like this has a little like garage piece to it. And finally my computer was like, we need to shut you down because you can't have this many tabs open. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know because I'm guilty of that as well. I totally feel that.
I have a dear friend of mine who, like, every time she sees my browser with all the tabs, she like freaks out. She's like, I just can't handle that many tabs open.
That many choices to look
Yes.
at. Yes. Gotcha.
And yet, one of the things so I spent all this time like researching the tent and then, getting there, and we set it up before we got out there just in case there was anything wrong with it. And yet what's funny is like, I got there and I realized one of the most important things about camping is your air mattress. And the air mattress was like, such an afterthought because I bought the tent on Coleman, like right before you check out.
You had tent fatigue,
I did.
purchase fatigue. So you're like, whatever, air mattress.
And the funny thing was, it was really an afterthought in the purchase process because Coleman, like they had this sale and the tent was 40% off, already marked off, which, I love a deal. So I'm like, great.
Mhm.
And it was already a tent I was considering. So I was like, boom, boom, let's do this. And then right before you check out, Coleman's like, hey, do you need an air mattress? Because here's a $100 air mattress that we'll give you for $30. And I was like, yeah, need an air mattress. Okay. Throw it into the cart. Here we go.
You took that bait, right? That pop-up ad.
I did.
Been there, done that too.
Didn't research it at all, just assumed, okay, it's fine, it'll be like an air mattress. And then even more so, prior to getting up to the campsite, like I brought out the tent, set it up, made sure there weren't any tears, or that we knew how to put it up correctly. It had all the poles and everything. Not once did I break out the air mattress and blow that up, make sure there wasn't a hole in it or anything. It was just interesting how like that wasn't the priority. And even more so, when we got up there and my sister was setting up like her tent, she was talking about, my sister know how to camp because her tent was, or her air mattress was like it was like a double mattress. I mean, this thing was tall. Like,
wow.
I think it went up to like above my knee. Like it was right, robust.
Yeah.
And it had its own like built-in pump and that you could like plug into the battery of your car, and like it had all of that. I know. I didn't even know
that existed.
Didn't even know
I didn't know that existed. Why? Because I do not camp. I do not even glamp. So this is all a learning curve for me as I'm listening to you.
Oh yeah. And then they have ones with like a certain kind of top on it, and that like certain kind of top helps protect, because obviously the air mattress is going to hold cold air. So, if you're camping and it's colder weather, you don't want to be lying on the top of this, this vehicle for like cold air hitting your body. So this thing like helps put a layer in to protect you from getting colder because of the air mattress. Yeah. No clue.
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, I know. because I didn't research air mattresses, right? I didn't. The issue of the air mattress became pretty acute because prior to going, I had developed a neck issue, and how I was going to be supported while I was sleeping really became forefront of my mind.
Mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
know, and in talking to my chiropractor and about going camping, he was like, okay, well, what are you going to be sleeping on? I said, oh, just an air mattress. And he's like, well, what kind of air mattress? And I didn't know.
You're
um
like the pop-up ad one.
yeah, that was $30 instead of $100. Thank you very much. Like, because I scored a deal. And yeah, it was certainly in contrast to our topic last week about finding the perfect tent. It just was odd, Elizabeth. Like I never even thought about the air mattress,
It's
like,
funny. Yeah. Like there's so many takeaways from your story. One is, so last week's episode, we talked about, optimizing and maximizing versus being satisfied.
mhm.
So, being satisfied with what suffices. And so that's what brought up, your 3.5 month
Yeah.
quest, hours a day. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Hours a day, multi-tab search for perfection of the tent when stepping back from the whole thing, and that was already such a illustrative example of seeking perfection
Yeah.
versus and optimizing versus being satisfied. But then just stepping back even more and looking at the grand scope of your story at the end of the day, yeah, to your point, this is a tent for camping.
Mhm.
This isn't like, searching for the perfect room at the plaza in New York on Macy's Day Parade kind of thing. It's
Yes.
inherent and part and parcel of camping is to expect imperfections. And
Mhm.
that's almost part of the the joy and the novelty of each and every camping experience. So the expectation of creating, or looking for perfection when inherent in
Yeah.
the experience is imperfection, that's where one can look back and reflect in terms of is that the way that you would spend your time in the future? Like, so
Mhm.
never mind, like, judging or shaming or
Right.
blaming what happened in the past, but it's more just a evaluation of, okay, well, the next time, what am I going to do? How much time am I going to invest in that? So that's one thing. The second thing, I couldn't help but notice as you're telling the story about how, hey, here comes this pop up ad, and hey,
Yeah.
that suffices. So I'm just going to take this, um, pick up this air mattress. In a weird way, I have to ask, because you actually didn't have any expectations other than comparison is a thief of joy, witnessing the
Mhm.
uber amazing mattress that your sister had. Okay, so removing that comparison, because you didn't have any expectations that the mattress had to be the perfect thing, I can't help but wonder, might you actually have enjoyed the mattress more because you didn't set yourself up
Mhm.
for judging whether or not it was good and perfect,
Mhm.
because what sufficed satisfied you when you purchase it. So upon using it, maybe without having such high expectations, you once again were satisfied, um,
Mhm.
because of the expectations you brought into it, or at least the expectations you placed on the value of a mattress.
Yeah, totally. And to add to that, I couldn't have predicted that. At the time that I purchased the air mattress, I didn't know that I was going to have some kind of issue like with my neck that could have maybe been better supported with a different type of mattress. And so, even in thinking, when we got there and I was setting it up and I saw the other, I saw my sister's mattress, I saw like what other people had, there was still never that moment of like, oh, I wish I had blah, blah, blah. It was more like,
Mm-hmm.
no, this was the mattress that I bought and I thought that it was going to be fine and it's still going to be fine. So there was still, even though I knew that I hadn't invested the same amount of time in researching the air mattress and now had a point of comparison, I was still okay with the choice. I was still okay with it and didn't judge it or look at the mattress and be like, well, yeah, I'm not satisfied with it now. Like I still
Mm-hmm.
was, but
Mhm.
that probably doesn't mean that going forward I wouldn't spend more time in researching my air mattress. Does that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Meaning, in recognizing, you know, what you want out of a camping, or at least
Mhm.
what you need out of a camping experience, right? I mean, it would be nice to get great sleep.
Sure.
Yes, you would like to have shelter, and yes, you'd like to have room and
Mhm.
lights in the tent and all that kind of stuff. But what you need from an enjoyable camping experience, ideally, is sleep.
Mhm.
So that changes, I presume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that for future camping trips, hopefully not for 3.5 months and hours a day, but you have changed your focus maybe a little
Yeah.
bit, not as much on the tent experience, but on the mattress experience. Is
Well,
that
and yeah, totally. When I shared in last week's episode how I was invited to join my friends on this excursion, and I needed to find the perfect plane ticket that was, the nonstop or the most direct way, and also the cheapest. That eventually I priced myself out and I couldn't go. That I missed,
Mm.
an opportunity there. I I am grateful actually in this case because that I the air mattress was a little bit of an afterthought because I did get to have that moment of just being satisfied. Like this is fine for what I need. So there
Mhm.
also was a little bit of gratitude that came over that I didn't also then spend so much time laboring over another purchase, right?
Yeah.
That also could have come at another cost. So that kind of like throw it in the bag at the last minute. I mean, upon reflection, I may flip my priorities there, but it doesn't have to be, this or that. But part of me was also just like, no, I'm actually grateful that I had a little bit of a this will do. This is what I need. I need an air mattress and this will be fine. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Absolutely.
As opposed to missing
And
out possibly.
yeah. And our priorities and our values, you know, can and should change throughout one's life, one's experiences. And it's again not to judge or blame or shame what's in the past. It's more just
Mhm.
like, okay, well, carrying forward what matters. And this is going to be a super duper tangent, but um, this is where, like, with my coaching clients, I can't help but think of an exercise that I have my clients go through because it's important to be aware of one's priorities and one's values. I think it's actually part of the key to happiness, and more importantly, the key to joy. Right. So when we talk about happiness is experiential and circumstantial, and joy is a state. I think when choices are made in alignment with one's priorities and one's values, that is how one can be in a state of joy, even when not everything is going our way, but at least, living in alignment with one's priorities and values can give that kind of stable, centered groundedness of a state of joy, even if in the experience that happens to be present at the very moment, it's an unhappy
Mhm.
experience. One can still feel aligned, but you can only feel aligned with your priorities and values when you are aware
Mhm.
of what your priorities and values are. So that was a long intro to this exercise. So I have clients. I have a sheet of paper and it has 3 columns and it's a full page. So there's a lot of words to choose from. And it's about, you can choose from the words, what are your priorities? Wealth, family, friends, health, all this kind of stuff. But it's like 3 columns long on a full page. So there's a lot to choose from. And so I have them, circle their top 5 priorities. And then they do that. And then we talk about other things like, okay, what do you want to get out of coaching and all this kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then, like after that conversation of about 10-15 minutes, then I give them another piece of paper and I say, okay, well, like, can you rank in this different list, this different piece of paper, how you spend your time, um, or and not just even physically how you spend your time, like what are the hours you spend at work, for example, but also where is your focus and priority? Where is your mind at, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm a mindset and well-being coach, so a lot of it is about mindfulness. Like, where is your mind? Where are you spending your time in your mind? What's taking up, space for rent in
Mhm.
your brain kind of thing. And it's frequently, I won't say almost always, but it is frequently shocking to many a well-intended client that, and then we have 10 more minutes of another topic of discussion, like, okay, well, what time are we going to meet next week, and what do you want to
Mhm.
talk about?
Mhm.
I do that on purpose to distract and break up those different parts of the coaching call or the meeting, so that at the end they didn't know
Uh,
that I'm going to bring it together. Meaning, at the end, I then say, remember that piece of paper at the beginning? Can you take it out? So these are the things that you say you value, you prioritize, or some of those adjectives in those pieces of papers. How do you want to be known? How do you want to
mhm.
be
Mhm.
remembered, if you will? Or how do you want people to think of you? And then I say, and then remember that piece of paper of where you spend your time and where your mind is, throughout the day. Take that out. And it's shocking to many a client when they do not match up. Do
Mm.
you know what I mean? Meaning, everybody wants to say that their priority is family, friends, faith, like all of the nice stuff. Everybody wants to believe that about themselves, and maybe like and that is their intent, and they want that. But are they living their life that way
Mhm.
based on those priorities and values? And if not, that's where that internal discord comes in, and
Mhm.
that internal dissonance and discordance um, is a source of unhappiness, anxiety, stress, because what one proclaims to be their priorities and values, if that's not how they're choosing to live their life, spend their time, that is a feeling of dis-ease. In medical terms, we call it disease, but it's a state of dis-ease when you're not aligned with your priorities and values. So it's, I think, always a good exercise to keep checking in on one's own priorities and values, because they do change, and
Mhm.
as they should. Different seasons of life where one season of life, career has to be the most important thing, and
Mhm.
then another season of life, no way, family has to be the most important thing. And sometimes, if you can know your priorities, even if life choices seemingly don't line up, if you can figure out a way where it does line up authentically, then there isn't this inner stress. What I'm specifically meaning about this, one of the biggest struggles, especially for working mothers, and I'm not being sexist, it's just statistically that's the case, is
Mhm.
the feeling of working mothers of like, you know, I'm not spending enough time with my kids, and kids are my priority, but my career takes me here. That's where I point out to them why the second worksheet that I have them circle, it's not just where are you physically spending your time, where is your mind, where is your
Mhm.
mindfulness? And what I tell them is, if you can relay to your kids the understanding and recognition of, you are doing all of this hard work, and it does take time away, it does take time away from you kids, but I'm doing this so that I can support you,
Mhm.
provide for you, that kind of thing. And then also from a mindfulness standpoint, when you do have the time to be in front of your kids, be mindful and present. And that's how you are living out those 5 words of your priorities and values that you happen to circle on the first worksheet.
Mhm.
And that's where it gives them a little sense of peace, in the recognition of how to balance all of those 5 priorities and values. And at a certain time, one priority and value might pull a little stronger,
Mhm. Mhm.
but at least you can discern amongst all 5. I mean, I'm arbitrarily choosing 5 because that's just the exercise I had my clients do, but balancing those 5 is easier when you know what they are and when you know how one might serve the other.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? That was like a long verbal rampage of a lot of nothing. So sorry.
No, it wasn't at all. No, it wasn't at all. Where my head went was just one, how cool it was. We started out talking about air mattresses and tent, and we get to something like this, which, as you were talking, I thought, well, this episode in and of itself can be something that people can come back to if they want to re-listen and get reminded of the strategy that you just laid forward. Now, they don't have the worksheet and they don't necessarily have you in a one-on-one way, which they could if they wanted to. They could reach out to Dr. Ignacio, but if not, it's for people like all of us, that is I think a tremendous gift that you gave, because it's always available, right? So like, we can keep coming back to this episode, the strategy that you put out, and find some way to do some kind of a place check-in with each other. Now, so if we're just kind of doing this out loud, I recognize that one of the reasons why I was so focused on the tent was I was really looking forward to this time with my sister and her family, and I was looking forward to that family time. Family time is very has become, I'm so close with my siblings now, has become something I cherish so much. Okay, so if that's true, the time I spent allotted to researching a tent, let's just say, could I, in some other way, found time to talk to her more, text her more, or connect with my brother, so that that connection that I was looking for, or that I thought I was finding in researching a tent, was potentially misplaced and could have been placed more in alignment with oneself. So that's where my head went in what you were saying. And I was like, oh yeah, it's totally spot on, because now I'm doing that self-reflection. I would also probably check friends, family, all those things, and equally be shocked that many of your clients experience when I'm like, oh, but I'm spending my time researching a tent, or I'm spending my time doing blank, realizing that some of that time was actually thinking, or truly an indication of what I really wanted to spend my time on. It was just not totally in alignment. Does that, I think I kind of fumbled it right
Absolutely.
at
Yeah,
the
I
end,
think
but
no. I thought that's exactly that. It Life is easier that way when it is lived priorities driven and values driven, as long as you keep checking in with what are your priorities and what are
mhm.
your values. And again, and I mean, I can't say it enough. Of course, everybody wants to believe the best of themselves. I'd like to believe the best of myself too. And so, yes, of course, you know, I'm going to say all of the quote right stuff like, oh, friends, family, faith.
Right, right,
Like,
right.
who's going to say, like, I can say this as a, because this is total fiction since I don't own a single thing, but, and I'm not judging anybody who actually might say this. So I'm just using this as an example, but, you know, who's really going to say, oh, I prioritize my Gucci's, my Louis
Mhm.
Vuitton, and my 52-inch TV. Like nobody's going
Yeah.
to say that, right? But if in looking at one, so in proclaiming family, faith, friends, career, professional development, those are all the most important to me. And then it's like, but Ignacio, you've just spent 2 hours surfing on Netflix
Mhm.
looking for something and you really haven't
Yeah.
found anything, but you're now going to spend another half hour because the past 2 hours didn't help. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's just where knowing and being aware of one's self-proclaimed priorities and values ideally line up with the choices that one makes. That's how life gets easier in being in this kind of state of at the very least peace and even possibly a state of joy.
Mhm. Mhm. I think as you were talking, I was reminded of a TV show that you and I happen to love, and that is Schitt's Creek. And
Oh, love
we
it.
look at the start of Schitt's Creek, which for many people they have a hard time with the first season. I mean, these are characters that are portrayed to be very vapid and materialistically driven, and probably some of the people that you were talking about that may label or put their labels as the things that drive them, their trips to all the fancy exclusive spots, or they've got all the nice labels and everything. But what we come to find with this family over getting to know them over the course of the seasons is that they actually do have the kinds of values that probably most of us would check off, which is like each other and family and friends and feeling valued and valuable and etc. And we watch them start to bring their alignment more, bring themselves more in
Mm-hmm.
aligned, and that watching the tension back and forth of them still kind of reverting to some of their older ways and or finding ways to marry the two is really where the joy of the show, or like the comedy and the heart of the show lives. But it's probably, I mean, for me, I don't want to speak for you, but it's one of the reasons why I've loved that show so much. um,
One of the many reasons.
One of the many reasons. But then I also think of a movie when growing up, Hook was a movie that I watched all the time. You know, this idea that Peter Pan grew up and he had a family, and then now he, you know, he says that he's a family man. He loves his kids, but there he is at his son's baseball game. Well, first of all, he doesn't show up for son's baseball game. He sends his assistant to record it because he's got meetings and, you know, things and work. You know, like you said, there are times when that happens, and ultimately the end of the movie, or has, and it's been out so long, I'm not revealing anything, but he starts to realize the things that do matter. He can find ways to make his time and his values are actually like more closely aligned. And
Yeah.
so I feel like this is not only something that we can do for ourselves, and use this episode as a way of help guiding us in that self-check, that reflection, but we also can see reminders in media as another, just like, hey, here's an example of somebody who's gone away from their values. And maybe that might be a little bit of a ding of like, hey, check in with yourself and see where you are, you know, because it is often, I think, used in movies as kind of the focus or the theme of a story.
And there's a way to even peel further to subcategories of said value. What I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is again a constant source of angst for working parents. This is, you know,
Yep.
fathers and mothers, is working hard, getting a good salary so that they can provide for their
Mm-hmm.
kids because, and the family, because they love their family. So family is top priority.
Mm-hmm.
The, you know, the reality of the world is, though, you know, you need an income in order to
Mm-hmm.
support them, and so all this time is spent at work, time away, you know, from the family, but it's all, well, it's so that I can provide for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can peel away love for family. And what I, when I say peel away, there's subcategories, and what I often ask is, that is wonderful. And that's no doubt. It's so clear how much you love. Not only is it so clear how much you love your family, but damn, you work so hard because you love your family. And I totally get that. Whether your kids at their age get that yet, I don't know. But kudos to you, like not judging or shaming you for spending all of these hours at work. But might you consider perhaps, do you want to um do you want your kids to think you're a great provider, or do you want your kids to know that they're loved? There's a distinction there. And so from time to time, when you're working hard, when you're missing these baseball games, when you're missing dinners, know that it's one thing to provide for your kids. And then there's another thing to love your kids and be present with them. And if you can be mindful of that, so from time to time you incorporate that balance, then that is again how you live your life. You live out your values. Is your priority that your kids feel provided for, or is your priority that your kids feel loved? If there is a discrepancy between the two, that's how one can either articulate the difference, or at least articulate the intent to one's family, or perhaps from time to time change up how you make your choices. Because another thing, I mean, another thing that the two worksheet exercise shows is, it's very easy nowadays for people to be like, well, that wasn't my intent. That wasn't my intent. I mean, I know I say that. I'm guilty when I, you know, hurt somebody's feelings, or I'm quick with a, you know, retort or something like that. And it hurts their feelings and they let me know. Yes, it's honest. When I say, oh, well, I'm so sorry. That's not my intent. And that's important to articulate. But that in and of itself is not the full apology, because there's intent and then there's impact. Just because it's not what you intended, you still have to be aware of the impact it had and honor that impact. You know, again, looking at and evaluating one's priorities and values, what is your intent versus what are the choices you're making that has their own impact, and is that impact what you want from your intent, since your intent is based on your priorities and values?
Mm-hmm.
and that's parenting, but that's also even in relationships, in terms of, being in a relationship and, assuming that the other person in a relationship knows, well, that I love you, kind
Yeah.
of thing. But that's assumed and almost taken for granted, because of a self-declaration that, of course, a relationship's the priority. But if choices are made, time is spent in a different way, then the impact is different. The choices do not reflect the supposed circled values and priorities of the first worksheet. It makes me think of the movie The Devil Wears
Where's
Prada.
Prada? Yeah.
And it's when Anne Hathaway, as this busy intern that's finally like kind of getting in her groove with work, notably her relationship not only with her boyfriend but with her friends starts kind of withering away, and it just becomes very clear that work has become all consuming.
Mhm.
And she's in a fight with her boyfriend. They leave the restaurant and she's proclaiming to him, of course, you're my priority. Like, can't you just understand? I love you. I mean, and then the phone rings from Meryl
Mhm.
Streep, her boss. And she says, she looks at the phone and she tells her boyfriend with whom she's arguing, it's my boss. And, she's looking torn between, I'm about to lose my boyfriend, but my boss is on the phone. And her boyfriend just quietly says, go ahead and pick up the phone, because whoever's phone you answer, that's who you're in a relationship with.
Mhm.
And that's so simple, but so powerful, because yeah, that's where your choices and your decisions and the time that you invest really reflects what you prioritize, regardless of what you might verbalize you
Mhm.
prioritize, or whatever you might circle on a worksheet that you prioritize.
Yeah.
That's where one of my favorite questions is it though? Like,
Yes.
oh, really? The relationship is the priority? Is it though?
Mhm.
Because, and this isn't like a shame blame, but it's literally just objectively saying, well, these are the choices you made, to my clients, these are the choices you made. Look at the impact.
Mhm.
Does the choices align with your declared priorities?
Mhm.
And is the impact the outcome that you wanted, considering your supposed declared priorities?
Yeah.
If not, no blame or shame, but just, if you want better, do better, because now you
Mhm.
know better.
Yeah, I remember what I wanted to say, and that brought it up. First of all, I was thinking of The Devil Wears Prada, but I thought I don't want to. I'm so glad you brought it up because that same scene went through my head. But I was like, I don't want to trivialize the tremendous takeaways for parents, right? Because as you were talking, as a parent yourself, just how relevant this is to the day to day mental place that parents live in, and live with. And I wanted to honor that, and I didn't want to trivialize it for bringing up Devil Wears Prada. And then you brought it up, which is so crazy. It's not a surprise because we're in each other's heads often. But one of the things that I wanted to say is there have been a number of meetings that I've had with parents as a result of issues that have happened at school, and they have brought up things that have been going on at home, particularly things like, we work all the time, we can't do this, like that, kind of the choices that they had to make between priorities and time, and then also with what they value. And the thing that I wanted to throw in there is that often the children were saying what they needed or wanted in terms of their
Mm.
parents. and
Mm-hmm.
and yes, there was heartache on the part of the parents because they're like, they want me to go to their basketball game, but it's often during the time when I have my one-on-one with my boss or something like that. There was some.
Yeah.
And and to your point that you brought up earlier is, okay, well, that may be true, and there are choices you have to make there, but even just talking that through with your child can go a long way to say, I know you want me at your basketball game, and I want you to know that I love you. That is very difficult given my current work situation or whatever. So even if the status quo has to be kept, even just acknowledging it, like you said, just putting it out there and talking to your child, if you're able to do that, goes a long way to tell your child, in this case, you are of value to me. I hear what you say you need. I hear what you say you want. And I recognize that and I honor it. I don't know that I can give it right now, but I still see it and honor it. And I just wanted to pull that out, because you had said it earlier.
In 1999, there was a study by Elizabeth Galinsky, and it's called Ask the Children. And they surveyed thousands of kids. I believe it was like third grade through 12th grade.
Hmm.
Um, and then they also surveyed the parents. And in surveying the parents first, they asked the parents, like, we're going to ask your kids some questions about, their happiness and family life and home life. What do you think um, troubles them the most? And most parents say that they're, oh, my kids are going to wish that I didn't work so hard and that I didn't, that, and maybe they might even say that I wish that, my mom didn't work. And so that was the assumption of the parents. And the overwhelming majority of the kids did not complain about the fact that the parents worked. So it wasn't that we work, it's how we work.
Hmm.
Meaning the most common the majority statement from the kids was that I wish that mommy or daddy wasn't so stressed when they got home. So what I mean by that is, again, that's where I'm talking about, that second sheet
Yeah.
that I have patients, fill out, or clients, I should say, fill out or circle in terms of where do you invest your time, but also where's your mind? Where do you spend your mind's time? Bringing in the stress and not being mindfully present with the kids is actually, at least according to this study, and again, this is greater than more than 1,000 kids, it's not that we work, it's how we work. And bringing in that stress to work and having the phone at the dinner table, or talking to your kid, but then the phone rings and then you got to check the phone and make your kid wait. That's actually more distressing than the amount of time spent at work or that we even work. So it was, I will say, very relieving to many client of mine, but also even the parents of the study, that it wasn't that we were shortchanging our kids by working, by not being the PTA head mom, which, by the way, I'm not knocking them. Thank
Right.
God for
Yeah.
thank God for the parents who do that. But I'm just saying, um, it is not that we work, it's how we work. It's not the time spent away. It's what is the quality of time, truly, the mindfulness of being present with your kids when you are home. So
Hmm.
there's, I tell some people, this wasn't my idea. I stole it from, actually, I think I heard it in a sermon. Um, it's called the trouble tree. And what I tell clients is, when you get home, ideally, if you have time, even take a walk around the block just so that you get fresh air. If you can, here in Hawaii, I know this might not be the case, especially during winter, but if you can, take off your shoes and like walk barefoot in grass or even concrete, because if we're always wearing shoes, then the world to us feels like leather.
Mm.
Think about it, right? If you're always wearing shoes, you're never really getting in touch with the earth and with nature and being grounded that way. It's truly a psychological practice called grounding. But if you can't even do that, if you don't have time to take a quick walk around the block, which can clear your mind before you enter the house and face your family, consider putting up a tree or a bush or some, or designate a bush or whatever, and you put your hand on it, and that is where you leave your troubles from work, so that you then enter the home, or, even at a restaurant, if you're like me, I don't cook. So if you're meeting your family at a restaurant, just figure out some way of dispersing that stress and that energy so that you can focus on your proclaimed priority of your family, of your kids. And so that's always that's often relieving for some of my coaching clients that are, distraught with angst in terms of their parenting, and are
Mhm.
they enough as a parent. But I also don't want to leave out our youthful listeners and viewers who are not parents yet. On a totally different note, I mean, this is the beginning of the year, and in starting the year fresh, a lot of people think of, like we've talked about in the previous episodes, resolutions and goals. And when you know your priorities, that makes it easier to kind of block out all of the noise that might be distracting so as to keep focus on one's priorities and goals. I know, for myself as a physician, because I knew pretty much non-negotiable that I wanted to pursue medicine, because that was a very clear priority or value for me, then all of the noise of, well, this class is hard, or I'm missing out on this party, or my other friends, that are not pre-med get to go and do this and party this, and their classes are like this, or their grades don't matter. It just makes it easier to kind of filter out the distracting noise.
Whether we keep this or not, it harkens back to, in my mind, to a previous episode of being able to say no to something means that you can say yes to something else, or vice versa. Being able to say yes to something means you can say no to other things. So being very clear about what your priorities are and how you want to spend your time, like you said, allows you to not even the noise is no longer even there, or you at least know how to handle it when you hear it. So it's a nuance of the no yes, and that, in my mind, which is that clarity also makes the other things a little bit easier to see and to know what to do with. I guess is in a kind
it really
of,
does make it easier. Yeah, because of the clarity. Love that word, because that's very true. With that clarity, choices, decisions. Are easier. And when one realizes, oops, that was the wrong choice, or oops, that was the wrong decision, the knowing and remembering of the priorities and values makes that lesson learned even easier. So either the correct choices are easier, or learning the lessons from the not so great choices are easier if one knows one's priorities and values and tries to make choices and decisions based on that.
We kicked off our New Year's new episodes with a reminder that we can chunk things, right? We can distill our year, our time, our goals, or whatever down into smaller fragments. And I think this is also a good reminder that we always have the ability to check in with ourselves and to look at our own worksheets and identify what are our values, where we spend our time, and that is always available to us, and that is always a choice that we can make. And sometimes I think we're blessed that people give us the reminder, and maybe that's feedback that's hard to hear. That's maybe feedback that might hurt us a little bit because it comes from somebody we love, and what they're saying is we're not getting the love in the way that we want or that we need, etc. And that can be hard to hear, but it still can be a beautiful gift, a beautiful opportunity to check in. But regardless of what anybody else gives us, we still can do that for ourselves. And in many ways, that can be the start of a new moment, a new goal, a smaller unit of time that can help us like regroup and come back to opportunities to ground ourselves and bring us more in alignment with what we value and how we spend our time, or even just an acceptance
and how you spend your mind,
and how you spend.
Also,
sorry, that's
right?
what, yes,
Yeah.
how you spend your mind. Yes, and also the potential that, okay, maybe how we spend our mind and our time is slightly away from what our values are, but that's not permanent. And that's a choice that we can make for the time being, because we know at the end of 2 weeks, we get past a big project or a big deadline, or we get past whatever it is, that there's still an opportunity to come back, and we match how we spend our mind, how we and what we value, that can come back. So I just I think there's a lot for everyone to take away from this episode, as a reminder that you have the choice to continue to check in. You have the choice to go through this exercise again. You have the choice to stop and say, what do I value now, and then where am I in alignment, etc. So so that
you get to determine what you prioritize, and you get to
Yes.
determine what you value, not somebody else, not your parent. I'm saying this is an Asian, not your parents,
Yeah.
not even, your partner or spouse. Like, you get to determine what are your priorities, what are your values. And by that, you then can make the choices and decisions of how you spend your time and how you spend your mind, so that you can live in alignment with yourself.
And also take a second to remind yourself that you are not just simply enough.
You are more than enough.
Just as you are.
Period.
Period. Mwah.